Hey, so today we are going to talk about how to extend donor management capabilities of CiviCRM. And to just go through our agenda, we'll start off with an overview of just donor management, contributions, money, people giving money within CiviCRM. We'll look at a couple extensions called summary fields and more summary fields. We'll take a look at relationship types, core relationship types in Civi, how they can be leveraged for donor management, and then using that in combination with an extension called relationship block. Then we'll take a look at how to leverage activity types for donor management and using CiviCRM almost as a light task management or even project management system. Take a look at another extension called donor search that integrates with an external product, review some grant management capabilities and basics, take a look at email activity functionality that comes core, and then also another extension available for that, and see what time we have for questions. And so a little bit about me to start off with. My name is Jenna Dillette. I manage the team and lead our work here at Square. And my reason for leading this topic is because this has been my job still for almost more years than on the technology side. So I studied philosophy and political science in college, and then I moved out to Colorado and was an AmeriCorps volunteer that first year after college. And because I have writing and reading skills, got roped in happily to doing grant writing, some grant management. After my AmeriCorps year, I worked for our local regional medical center and wrote grants for a critical access hospital. I live in Southern Colorado. So critical access hospital, and then went back and became the first development director for the human service organization that I had been an AmeriCorps volunteer at. And so everything related to details of grant management, who's the funder, when our reports due, endowment building, especially endowment building for a human service organization where we have a homeless shelter and a food bank network. And so starting an endowment where you're actually saving funds for tomorrow when you have urgent needs today, that's a very different kind of donor base. That's a different kind of communication and follow up than, say, the communications that are sent out to promote and engage in and just ongoing giving. And so all of that translates into systems. How can we best record the interactions that we have with individuals, with organizations to see the impact that they've had, and then best engage with them in the future to leverage their support moving forward. At the time, the executive director I worked with at the Human Service Organization, he'd already been part of the organization for a few decades and had deep established relationships. And so for me to come in knew how to best respect the relationships that he built and then also add on to that, but record it in a place that could serve the organization long term. So like I mentioned, I'm with Square, and we were started in 2008. We've been working and supporting organizations in CiviCRM that entire time. We're a small team of 14, focused specifically with nonprofits and membership associations
I
and
love that.
building, supporting,
Constructive way of
hosting their
communicating.
platform. And Mark, if you can go ahead and make sure and mute all participants. We have the chat box open. And so if there's any questions or comments, feel free to drop
Constructive
in there
way.
and we'll have the ability to go through a Q&A later. So
Just real quick,
yeah,
Jenna, I don't have the ability to mute. So if you're not muted,
okay,
can you please mute yourself? Because we're getting something back on that. Thank you.
thanks all. One final thing I'll note just about Square is I think of us as being constructively opinionated. There's a lot of ways that you can do things in CiviCRM, as you'll see from the training today. And there's a lot of pros and cons on how and why you may approach meeting a need in one way versus another. We try to deeply understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. So that real world perspective of you have this executive director that you're trying to download the brain of. Where do you put that in your CRM system? We want to understand that real world scenario to then best inform the way then your system is set up or the training and support you have around it. So let's dive in and start off by looking at just an overview of money and donors in general in the system. So what we're looking at here is just by contact record. All the screenshots in today's training are taken from one of our demo sites of CiviCRM. I'll be working to point out what is unique to a full installation of CiviCRM versus what you have access to in CiviSpark. And the majority of what we're going to go through today is also available in CiviSpark, which is really great. So whether you have a super complex installation already in place that you're looking to get even more out of, or you're considering CiviCRM for the first time and looking at one of the CiviSpark options, I'll try to be pointing out what's available. So from the contact record, contacts do things. The heart and soul of CiviCRM is contacts, organizations, individuals, and households. And contacts do things related to your organization. They give donations, they sign up for memberships, they attend events, they participate in campaigns. And all of that on the left-hand side in this view is an ability to see that. So you can see this is my contact record and I have 7 contributions. There's a little number 7 in that blue circle. So if we dig in further, I can see those contributions. I can see the financial type that they were, the amount, whether it was pending or completed or canceled based on the status of the contribution, and also the contribution date of when those funds were received. In those blue buttons just above the contribution details, I can record in the back end in CiviCRM contributions that have come in. So maybe there's mailed checks or cash or however money shows up, or a another funding source, or you have a credit card contribution that comes in. Contributions via a donation form on your website would be automatically recorded and then listed out in this, and then you'd see that source column filled out for where the money came from, if it was something that came from a contribution page. And so what we'll see with these types, the donation type or membership due or event fee, that the financial type of the money matters, and you can do a lot with that in the system. So digging into that, we'll start with financial accounts. So in the guts of CiviCRM, this is a place that a lot of organizations you may never even see, and you don't have to configure this in any way. You can just sort of use the system as it is. But one thing that's good to know is that you can actually configure all the financial accounts in CiviCRM to match your financial accounts that you have in your accounting system. There's additional extensions, which we won't cover today, but if you want to integrate your CiviCRM system with QuickBooks online, you can. There's a lot of bookkeeping reports that you can leverage. There's batch processing for the ability to bring in multiple donations or record those in kind of a bulk way to get all of that information accurately in CiviCRM and match what you see from an accounting perspective. So your financial accounts can be set up matching your accounting codes as needed. And we see in those settings kind of what you can do. What is the actual code, tax deductible, enabled or not? Is it taxed? All these different settings, which you can tell besides the label, none of them are required. And so you get to choose which of those fields are relevant for the way that you want your system configured. From there, then you'll set up your financial types. So financial types are a combination of individual financial accounts. And so out of the box, CiviCRM comes with 4: campaign contributions, donations, event fees, and member dues. And then any number of other financial types can be set up based on the financial accounts you have enabled in the system. This is really helpful when you think about a price set, which we'll see a screenshot of shortly, of maybe you have your member dues and you want to have an additional donation. Those are going to be 2 different financial types. And from a reporting standpoint, you likely want to keep track of the difference between money that has come from membership and money that has come from donations. And there's an extension for that called the line item reporting extension, where you can actually break down and see where money is coming from to have it accurately tracked, instead of thinking everything is membership dues when actually maybe 20% of the total contribution was for donations. So when we look at the financial type, you give it just what it's called, any description that's for internal purposes, and then you also will select the financial accounts that are relevant for that financial type. As I mentioned, this is relevant when you're setting up price sets. And so when you set up a price set, you can have multiple line items. Each of those line items can be of a different financial type. And then with your line item reporting, you can have that granular detail about, in one total transaction, what money was relevant for each of the ways that within your organization you think about and bucket money. And I know, treasurers and accountants care about that with the way you either you're thinking about income. So this is all viewable then when you're looking to find contributions. You can filter all money that comes into your system based on financial type, plus the payment method, plus the date and time that it was received, and additional filters such as the group that the contacts were in who made that donation. The find contributions is the exact same view as if you were to go to advanced search in CiviCRM. It just puts that plus all other elements about contacts. So anybody who lives in Tennessee and likes blue and gave at least $500 last month as a donation. That would be the sort of search that you could do from advanced search using the criteria and finding contributions. All of this information is also available via reports. This is a screenshot of all the out-of-the-box reports that come with CiviCRM. If you have that enabled, go to reports, contribution reports. These are all great starting reports. And so there's a lot that's already been kind of set up and configured that then you can change the columns that you have selected for what displays in that report, as well as the filters that display. So say filtering a report for individual financial types and then duplicating that for another financial type. Looking into the specifics of a report, this is the out-of-the-box top donors report. There's a little checkbox there that says available for dashboard. So everybody in your organization that has access to CiviCRM, hopefully you have your own account and you're not sharing accounts, because one of the great benefits, besides from a security practice of not sharing accounts, a great benefit of that is that when you log into CiviCRM versus when a coworker logs into CiviCRM, you can see reports that are relevant to the specific things that you do within your organization. So for example, maybe I want to see top donors because I'm on the fundraising team, but my coworker who is doing event management, maybe they see participants who have registered as of Monday for upcoming events. And those could be dashlets made available from the dashboard that when you first log into the system and click onto CiviCRM, accessing CiviCRM, you see that information at the top. So when you have something available for the dashboard, that means that you can drag it and put it, there it is, I've enabled it. I can drag it and pull it into my overall CiviCRM dashboard. You can do this with any report in the system. And you see that reports are also controlled based on the permissions that a contact should have in the system. So even if you save it as a dashlet for use on the dashboard, if a user does not have the correct permissions or is not part of a permission controlled group that has access to see that report, it won't display for them. And so that's a really nice granular control to be able to protect the information in general within your system and serve that up to any administrative users that have those controls. Dashlets are typically enabled and disabled as needed, especially thinking about fundraising and donor management. There's lots of campaign seasons or the ways that you're caring about things in a kind of a cyclical nature. So you may be changing and having a report available as a dashlet, and then 3 months down the road, you can disable that or just remove it from your dashboard from displaying, since that's no longer relevant with where you're at in your donor engagement and fundraising cycles. So let's take a look at a couple extensions. So the two extensions, they're called summary fields. And then there's another extension that's built on top of the core of summary fields. It's called more summary fields, which, as the title suggests, give you even more fields to review. Um, First shout out for summary fields is Jamie from Progressive Technology Project for developing and maintaining the extension. You can find this by going to civicrm.org, click the little menu item at the top that says extend, and you can start typing in summary, and you'll see both summary and the joinery's more summary fields pop up. So what this extension provides is just a whole bunch of fields that you can then add and have in your system that are automatically calculated. And then all of those fields make it that much easier for you to do analysis and reporting on the activity of your donors, and then take further action because of the way that they've shown up to your organization. The second, as I mentioned, shout out to Alan Shaw at Joinery for developing and maintaining this. This is more summary fields. And so it adds additional options to the many options that come with the first extension. Once it's installed in your system, under that little green triangle, you can start typing in summary and you'll see summary fields, and that will bring you to the administrative view of how to set up this extension. And that's what we're going to look at next. So the extension itself, it divides these many fields into different groups. So there's fundraising, membership, events, there's different kind of groupings of all of these fields. You'll see that you have the ability to select on that left-hand side of all of the different field options, which ones are most relevant to your system? Which ones do you care about? What do you want to have enabled? And then the most critical step, which is why we talked at the beginning about financial accounts and financial types, is that you determine which financial types should be considered when these fields are calculated. Because member money is different from event money, different from donation money. And even if you have even if you have price sets that sort of combine all of those three things, typically those are going to be thought of and tracked in a different way. So you can then select the financial types that are relevant for totaling the lifetime contribution. Maybe that should just be, in this case, donation and campaign contribution. And then I would uncheck event fee and member dues. And so selecting the fields that you want in your system, those will be automatically calculated and based on the financial types that are in the system and all the money that's flowing in either automatically because of registration and gifts coming in, or that is manually set up and managed by your team. So this is the fundraising block of fields that are available. Then there's membership fields that are available for summary fields. And again, you select which ones are relevant that you want in your system and set which financial type should be used for calculating that. If I were to then disable donation and campaign contribution, that means that any money that is of that financial type on a contact record would not be used to calculate, say, the date of the last membership payment, because it would only be looking at financial types of, say, member dues. Same thing for events. There's lots of different additional fields that come with the extensions when installed to do additional calculations for event transactions. So enabling the ones you want and the financial type needed. CiviMail. All of these are then additive for the way that you can create a really granular segmented groups and really robust reporting. You can also view related contributions based on specific relationships. So this could be relevant where my husband is making donations and that records on his contact record, and I am going to different events, maybe on my own, and there's money associated with that, with my registration fee to a gala. And together, because we have a relationship type of husband, wife, then we can see the total of our household. So even though we're not set up in a system maybe as a household, we can be still set up and summarized on both of our contact records, the total giving because of the relationship type that we have. So just like we could select financial types before, you also, in this case, for related contributions, will select what relationship types are relevant in these calculations, because there's many relationship types that come out of the box with the system. And there's many more that you could create because of the way that you're needing to manage information in your system. And finally, there are the performance settings. And so in this case, how often should these fields be updated? There's going to be money, depending on the size of organization you have, money may come in very frequently in the system. Is this every hour? Is this once a day? When is the information being updated? And you can have control over that, which may influence the way that you look at your reports or do searches in the system. So the next thing we'll look at, which we already kind of took a peek at, related to relationship types and how those can be leveraged for related contribution calculation, is relationship types themselves. So especially in larger teams where there's a fundraising department and You have your own kind of deck of contacts and relationships that you know that you're cultivating, and your coworker has another set of relationships that they're responsible for cultivating. A really quick and easy way to do that is to create relationship types in CiviCRM to view and monitor who's in charge of what. And so this is as simple as setting up a new relationship type, which I have called donor manager is, donor manager of, where then you can add that on any contact record. In this case, I just chose one of my team members to illustrate what that looks like. Then from my contact record, when you click into the relationships tab and you see that enabled, this is that relationship type configuration where with any relationship type, when you're setting it up, you have label of A to B versus B to A. What is the actual language used for this relationship? The help text makes it really easy for you to kind of logically think through by saying the sentence out loud to yourself. Okay, Jenna is relationship manager of this person. You know, you can kind of think it out as you're choosing your words for the way it's configured in the system. Then you determine the type of contact in contact type A versus contact type B. The way I set this up, I chose individual to all contacts. And so my donor managers on my team are all going to be individuals, but we're going to be managing relationships with both organizations and individuals in this case. So choosing all contacts. The next is if you have the relationship block extension available, then you'll see those settings of if you want to have this specific relationship type, which in this case is called donor manager, if you want that relationship type to display in the relationship block. So the relationship block works with Contact Layout Editor. So Contact Layout Editor is another extension available in CiviCRM. It also comes with CiviSpark. So whether you have a full version of CiviCRM or you're using CiviSpark, Contact Layout Editor, I think in Pro and up is available as an add-on extension, and that gives you control over the view of a contact record for what fields display and where. So instead of having, say, the employer block and contact ID at the first, maybe you want to have the mailing address first, or maybe you want to have communication preferences first, or maybe you want to have a custom field block called favorite color first, because you really want to know what people's favorite color is when you look at their contact record. Whatever it is, Contact Layout Editor lets you control that visual display so it surfaces the most important information for your contact management experience when you land on that record. The relationship block then works with Contact Layout Editor to then have a new block called key relationships that then you can add and put where you want in the layouts that you create to then display. And with each relationship type, you can determine if that should be displayed then on a contact record to make and surface that information quickly. I will note the relationship block is not available with CiviSpark. You would have to have a full version of CiviCRM to install that extension, but the contact layout editor extension is. So this is what that looks like in practice. So threw together a layout via contact layout editor called donor engagement. You can see that's what that layout is called, little blue button there, and then put it in the top right corner. Donor manager is Brian. That's a clickable link. I could go to Brian's record, or in this case, as both admins, it would more be like, don't touch this contact, because Brian is the one who's cultivating this relationship. You can use this in a lot of other ways because relationships, as you may already know, can be used in groups, in reports, in advanced search to segment and take action on contacts, which leads us nicely into thinking about activity types and the way, just like we saw with setting up a relationship type, you can set up specific activity types for tracking engagement that has either already happened or should happen. So this screenshot is of adding a new activity type to CiviCRM. I chose to call it donor management. You could call it whatever you'd like. You could set up 4 different activity types with slightly different names. The great thing about activities in CiviCRM in comparison to, say, notes is that you can have who that activity was with. You can have the status of it. You can schedule follow-up activities directly from that, or even a reoccurring You can have notes, add attachments. You can add any number of custom data fields to that specific activity type. And so the fact that it comes with a status and a date makes it really helpful. This is when I talk with some of the clients we work with about CiviCRM almost becoming a very light project management system. So me as a manager, I could look ahead at our cultivation activities and assign out and make sure that I want Mark to follow up with this person by this specific date. That could be created as an activity assigned to him, due on a specific date with a status scheduled. Then Mark could have a report that is filtering based on assigned to me of this specific activity type, and due date this week or next week. Then, like we saw before with dashlets and making and enabling reports to be available via the dashlet, when he first logs into CiviCRM, he can see everything that has been assigned to him and due this coming week. So that's creating the activity type. This is what that looks like then when I go to add it to a contact record. It's added by me. I'm the one who is looking at the contact record. I can add additional contacts of who that's with. So maybe you had a lunch with a prospective donor and there was 3 of you from your team. All of those folks could be included in with, and maybe for the actual follow-up, whatever that might look like, you can assign it to one or multiple people. You give it a subject, give that a date, give it a status. Was it already completed? Is it scheduled for the future? And if you can also schedule if that's a repeat activity or if there's an additional activity that needs to be taken. When I think about that example I gave at the beginning of the training of the executive director I worked with at the Human Service Organization, and just the deep and beautiful relationships that he had built with so many funders over decades, and where and how to record that. I had lots of sketchy notes written on pieces of paper that then never made it into a system. And I was only there for a few years. And so thinking of the gift of some of this data structure that you want to keep as simple as possible when you first configure it. So hopefully it's as usable as possible by the broader team. So if you're making phone calls, if you're sending emails, which we'll look at later, if you're meeting up in person with folks, there's really, really easy ways out of the box. And this is also available in CiviSpark that you can set up and manage those interactions and communication points, which is really a gift of longevity for your organization, those touch points that you have. So no matter how long you're with your organization, if someone comes in and replaces or your team grows, they can see the history of where those interactions have taken place and kind of what the follow-up of next step was. And so there's a smooth relationship handoff between folks. We looked at the screen. That's just the other options that come with any activity out of the box. And then this screen is showing your ability, if you wanted, you could create a custom data field set that's specifically relevant to this activity type called donor management. And so you can create any number of custom fields, whether that's contact reference, multi-select, text area, single text box. There's all kinds of different custom field data types available that could be created as one or multiple, all specific to a certain activity type. That then becomes available in advanced search. Activity type is donor management, also available as a criteria in reports. So this is looking at the activity detail report. You can access the activity reports underneath the contact reports in CiviCRM. So if you go to reports, contact reports, and then you can select activity reports. And in this case, I was picking on Mark of it's Mark who's assigned this activity that is of type donor management. He could save that as on his dashboard to then see anything that's assigned ahead to him. So the next extension we'll look at as we're blazing through is called Donor Search. This is an integration with an external product called Donor Search, and a shout out to Greenleaf Advancement and Joinery for developing and maintaining this extension. You can download it, search for it, and civicrm.org extend, find it in the directory. And what this does is it basically provides additional insights to your fundraising team on a donor's personal background, their giving history, wealth information, all to kind of determine and evaluate their capacity to give, and also their affinity, so their warmth towards, say, the particular type of organization that you are. So that brings in a bunch of fields that you either probably will need to be a little more technical to set this up, or contract for a brief amount of support from one of the many CiviCRM supporting agencies to then have all of these fields populated based on your subscription to this service, and then having these fields available for additional filtering, reporting, segmenting of your contacts that then changes the way you do follow up and outreach with organizations. So not a lot to say about this one besides this exists, it's well supported, maintained. You can get it installed. This would require the full version of CiviCRM. This extension isn't available with CiviSpark. The next functionality that we'll cover is just a look at grant management that comes out of the box with Civi. All of this functionality is available in CiviSpark as well. And so this is just a shot of kind of core Civi grant, what that looks like. You see there's only a few fields that are actually required: the applicant, status, type, requested, and then everything else is optional. The VCERM grant is really designed more for grant makers rather than grant givers. But one workaround I like, which we'll jump to here, is word replacement. This is one of my favorite features of CiviCRM that I know when I've done demos, I always try to work in how could word replacement be used in this. So in this case, if you are a receiver of grants and you're not a giver of grants, well, this is a really great opportunity to just change that language a little bit. And so in this case, we would just be changing application received to, say, application sent. So in this case, you're recording when you submitted an application to a funder. You could take any one of these fields, and if you like the data structure of that, say money received instead of money transferred, grant maker versus grant receiver. So using word replacement, you can change the language of CiviCRM to directly match the way you talk about things in your organization, all of your stuff. With word replacement, you can have an exact match. And so in the UI, what you see is matching the way you think about funds and relationships. You can create any number of custom fields also to further extend what's available in Civi Grant. You have complete control over the status for the way that you think about your grant submission process. You can disable, enable, add options for the way the grant status is tracked. And you can also change the grant types. If you have specific initiatives or programs within your organization and you want to have likely a different data structure about the information you're tracking or the folks that need to be involved in those application processes, you would just change the grant types that you have, and that could cascade into custom data field sets that you've set up. So word replacement, another side about word replacement, it's a great April Fool's Day too. You could change like all your contacts to dragons. Contacts equals dragons. So just giving everybody an opportunity to think about the way you could mess with your coworkers the next time you have April Fools. Just make sure to disable it in the future. So there we go. I enabled it. I changed application received to application sent. And now I refresh new grant. And now that label says application sent. So it's as simple as that. That can apply to the way you think about money in general. So maybe you only use CiviCRM and contributions for collecting donations. If you want contributions to be donations instead, this is also where you would use word replacement to use just that simple replacement. Contribution equals donation, contributions equals donations, etc. with any other language in the system. The grant information is available in advanced search, all those same fields. There'd be additional if we had set up any custom data field sets for grants. Also available via contact reports. So if you want the grant reports, you go first to contact reports in CiviCRM, and then you can duplicate, save, modify the couple out of the box that come with to create additional. And like we've seen a few times, make all of those reports and available via your dashboard. A key thing here to point out also, if you enable it for the dashboard, you get to choose the number of rows that display in that report, as well as how often is the report being refreshed. And so in this case, it's set to refresh every hour. So if there's changes, 5 minutes ago, I'm not going to see those changes in the dashboard yet. I'd have to change the cache settings. And so there's control over how much information is displayed in the dashlet than on your dashboard when you're first in CiviCRM, and also how quickly, how often is it refreshing. This could be reserved and a report only available to you in a select group within your system. You could add it to the overall menu structure of CiviCRM if you want it as a quick link, or you can add it as a sub menu item. So you don't always have to navigate into reports to access it. It could even be at the top level bar for critical reports that you have. And that applies to any kind of report in the system, not just reports that you may duplicate and create related to grant management. So um, I already mentioned this word replacement, one of my favorite kind of low tech things in Civi. You can change all your language to match how you talk about your stuff, and that's a good thing. That adds a little bit of polish to your system. Our final topic, and then we'll go into questions that anybody has, is looking at email to activity processing. So this is out of the box functionality. This screenshot is a view of documentation about that. You may need a little bit of support in setting this up or have questions. Email can just be confusing. I know when that's being configured for outbound or bringing in processing into a system, there's lots of partner agencies that can help you with this. And so what this does is basically it fetches from your email account. So my email is jenna@square.com. Most of my work actually happens from my email account, not from at Square, from our project management system. And so from a CRM standpoint, it could be really helpful that some of the exchanges I have with, say, prospective donors or a funder, that all of that exchange is recorded in CiviCRM. And so the email to activity is what makes that possible. It means that emails that I send from my email account can then be recorded and logged as an activity on a contact record in CiviCRM. So then Mark on my team, Brian on my team, anybody could see these relationships that I'm having. But again, like the example and story I told of the executive director that I worked with, all the relationships over so many years to try to wade through and best kind of represent and cherish into the future for the short amount of time that I was with that organization. This is that sort of functionality that makes that easier. The point of any CRM system is to aid and record the work that you're doing in real life, to build and strengthen the relationships that you have with all kinds of individuals and organizations to advance the mission of your organization. That should be a very obvious statement, but it's little things like this that help record that longevity of the flavor of conversations and follow-up that happen. And so there's this that can come out of the box with the system. There's an additional extension that we've set up for a client of specific Outlook integration. Here's an example of what that looks like. This is the National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers. And so for them, when they send emails, they have the ability on that right-hand side in their UI to save the contacts or save the email. They can select which of those options they want. Here's kind of a zoomed in view of what that looks like. Saving the email means that, like I said before, it records that email as an activity on that corresponding contact record in CiviCRM. Saving the contact means that that contact would be created in CiviCRM if it doesn't already exist. And then if you have save email as well selected, it's going to save that correspondence. And so that also saves time in that you're not having to actually manually create all of those contact records that you may have only had a relationship with via your email account. You'll want to update that information likely in CiviCRM as the contact is created, but at least it kind of gets you partway down the road. And so this is we're to question time. I've had a lot of slides and I probably have spoken really fast, but what the purpose for the demo today with everything is really to show a lot of the either out of the box functionality of leveraging relationship types, leveraging activity types, setting up custom data field sets because of an activity type or relationship type to further the things that you're likely already doing. And then to showcase a few extensions that are well maintained and publicly available to then do even more. And so let's look at the chat and see what kinds of questions have come in. And if anybody has anything to add of how you might already be doing doing things with some of these different components in CiviCRM. So the floor is open. Let's see. I see Rob asked about the summary extension, how it's enabled. And so depending on how your system is hosted and set up, that may be something that you can go to the extension directory in your system and search for the extension and install it, or it may be something that from a developer standpoint, they are downloading the extension and adding and enabling it for you in the system. For all organizations we work with, none of our clients or me or Mark on my team have the ability to add extensions through the UI. Our developers do that, but that can kind of depend on what your hosting setup is. Can summary fields be used in conjunction with contact summary layout? So event staff can see summary fields. That is a great question. Um, I am blanking right now of the way you can create blocks and specifically add some fields to those blocks. Does anybody on the call have the answer to that who may have that more top of mind for the way you can create custom field groups on
You
contact layout editor?
you can make multiple layouts and assign those layouts to groups. So if you have, for example, a certain group of staff who needs to see a specific version of the layout, you create a layout for them and then assign it to that group. And you can do that with multiple layouts.
Great. Yeah, so there was a question from Laura about the dashboard with additional widgets such as the LiveUnt, SciBunt reports. Absolutely. So those settings for make this report available for the dashboard. That's available from any report that is either comes stock with CiviCRM or you duplicate or create. And so all of those reports can be made available as widgets that then you can select from and add to your specific dashboard. And that's why I want to reiterate again the importance of having your own user login in the system and that you're not sharing user accounts. That's a great thing too with CiviCRM. There's the different agencies that specialize in CiviCRM may have different models for the way that they are charging. But overall, it's typically never the case that it's a per user fee. There's some SaaS products that you might be paying per user. And so that incentivizes at times people sharing accounts. But in this case, especially with the way that you can customize your dashboard per individual user, having those widgets enabled for you because of the work you do in comparison to a coworker that does slightly different work is really powerful. Google Mail, there's a question about for the mail integration. I think the work with that is what that would look like with the out of the box, the core functionality for email to an activity is what I would investigate related to the email to activity processing. That is one thing that I've been surprised at with the number of organizations that we work with that I think it's only one or two that have this functionality set up or enabled. And so um, which when I think about um, the value of having a record of some of those communications and that not just living in an inbox, there's a lot of value there, but it's clearly more in kind of a nice to have, just in thinking from the perspective of how many organizations we work with and the number that don't have that in place, which is especially why I wanted to showcase it today. There's a question about having a more beefed up dashboard with that has a many backend reports. In the demo preparation, I didn't have one of those already set up that really shows what a dashboard could look like if you have a lot set up, but that's something that you could easily play with and change the order and kind of the left side, right side alignment. There's lots of other ways too for building out pages, and we didn't even touch Search Kit and Form Builder today. That would be another training. That we could dig into that would be kind of more of a super user, I would think of, for doing more with your metrics and reporting. But there's a lot of ability to build really granular dashboards for the information that you're wanting to see. One way that I kind of measure an effectiveness of a system and also the comfort of a team is how much the team is able to do within the system itself. So within CiviCRM versus what do you feel like you have to export out and then you're manipulating in Excel or taking in as a Google Sheet and running formulas and things like that. So that's why I wanted to showcase a lot of the calculated fields that are available because I know our goal at Square is wherever possible, we want to keep you within the system and you taking action, doing analytic review and comparison. If more of that can happen in the system, you think of the system doing a good job. There's time and place where information has to be exported out. That's not a bad thing, but there's a lot of ways that you can probably do a deep dive and review of your metrics and engagement by leveraging what comes with the platform. Yeah. There's a question and a follow-up about what's the best way to show a contact as a donor in the contact summary? Um, and which is interesting. There's a lot of ways to think about that. One proposal from a participant was that there could be a specific subtype of contact created called donor. That could be a subtype off of the individual contact record. Another quick thing that is a visual cue is like we saw in one of the very first slides on my contact record, there's the contributions tab and then that little number of the number of contributions that exist. So that's another visual cue. There'd be other ways to think about that too. For example, if you have the relationship type enabled of kind of donor manager is, and if one of those exists and you're using contact layout editor, with the relationship block, that would be another cue since that would be completely optional if a donor manager is assigned. Yeah, importing. There's a question about how to import a massive list of contacts into CiviCRM. So there's some good documentation. Great. And Catherine linked to it for importing data. Um, and I think of TurboTax, there's a UI where you have you'll upload a CSV file and you'll select and have information in individual columns. So first name, last name, email, address, everything, the different information, and then you'll map that to the specific CiviCRM field. What I always recommend is that you start with a list of, say, 2 people. So maybe you have your exact data structure and you just have 2 contacts. So no reason to actually import in everything. The first thing you'll want to do is make sure that the columns that you have in your source data and then the way that you've done the field mapping will match. And this can be a training that we actually go through in a future one in the series is importing contacts into the system. And then the way that then you can layer and import. So bringing in contacts, bringing in contribution data. So some organizations reasonably may have multiple different avenues where they're collecting funds. And so then you're bringing in contribution donation history from another platform where you collect funds, and you still want to put that into your system of record, which would be CiviCRM. And so importing contacts is very much a part of the overall donor management experience. And Civi, that's a great question. There's a question about how to make sure that contacts are unsubscribed in email lists. And so that's a great question that links to some just rules and laws governing email compliance and regulation, which should be taken seriously. So all emails should have an unsubscribe option. You should only ever be emailing contacts that have actively opted in to receive communications. We know this can be kind of a difficult or risky conversation sometimes with organizations if they've been very used to emailing everybody who they have an email for, which just because you have an email for a contact doesn't mean that they've opted in to receive your monthly newsletter um, or ask emails. And so in CiviCRM, the unsubscribes will happen with the group that they're part of. And in emails, they can also choose to opt out, which would mean that they don't receive any communications. And so the connection here would be looking at your mailing templates if you're using CiviCRM for your bulk email management to make sure that they include those proper links. I have some support options on the slide as you've been seeing. It's been the slide that's been up for a bit of reaching out to us on square.com or shoot an email. There's also a great big old list of experts in partners in the CiviCRM space. You can find those at civicrm.org/CiviCRM experts, get under get help. And you can also join chat.civicrm.org. It's the Mattermost version for CiviCRM. There's lots of different channels that you can join, including one that's a user support and lots of one-off questions from folks all over the world and plenty of people monitoring that in order to provide assistance. Okay, so there's a question about Civi not notifying monthly donors about a monthly gift. So that is very doable. What that could look like is it's a functionality, which I'll make a note of for a future training topic, looking at scheduled reminders. And so there's an ability in the system to set up scheduled communications related to different actions that have happened. So one example could be you want a follow-up email to go to any donor who has made a gift of $100 or more 2 weeks after the gift, 2 months after the gift, and 6 months after the gift. And that they might be linking to specific blog posts or updates or impact statements from your organization. And so staying in touch for that additional donor cultivation. So those scheduled reminders can be set up and you set the financial type, the status of the contribution, whether or not it is scheduled or has been received. That functionality is really relevant for event management as well, and the way that you may be engaging with and promoting events and following up with participants. And so for notifying monthly donors, there's definitely ways that that need can be met, and digging in more to how how your system is currently configured to propose the best way. There's probably a few options for that. There's also making sure that there are receipts that are generated with all contributions. Those receipts can be updated, changed, the formatting of those to match your organizational branding. All of those live within the workflow emails of your system. And it'll be, I'm not even that, my technical is of another kind. I don't even remember the language, Mark, if you know of what the email receipts are written in, but that's a little more technical to edit those, the body of that, but very, very possible. Just not something that I would do in setting up a new system. When you're adding a contribution page to a system, you can always control the some language that goes in the confirmation email. That language that you put in the UI of a contribution page when configuring it is sort of appended at the top part of the generic receipt that has the broader details about the contribution. And that's part of one of those workflow messages that I mentioned, that the language, the look, order of information, all of that can be modified. And so any email that goes out from CiviCRM can be updated to both match branding of your organization and also have the language in the order and format that you want to have displayed. Lots of setting controls with Yeah, HTML. See, I don't want to see HTML. The team knows, like, oh, I like paragraphs. I work in sentences and paragraphs and checkboxes. Um, with the training, I know I showed a lot of screens of when you're creating financial accounts, when you're setting up financial types, if you're looking at creating relationship types, if you're creating custom data field sets. A lot of that may be work that is done when your system is first being set up, but all of those settings are still available to be changed, even if your system has already existed for years. And so there's some cleanup that can happen too. So one thing that's a common thing that we'll review is address location. So out of the box, there's a whole bunch. There's home, main, work, billing, all these different kind of address and contact detail locations that can be overwhelming. Your organization likely doesn't use all of them. And so it's best to kind of consolidate and make sure that data is in the correct, say, three that are relevant, and then other ones that aren't going to be used are just disabled. And so there's a consistency in the way information is recorded. So no matter how established your CiviCRM system is, whether it's existed for years and has customizations in it, or if you're new to CiviCRM and just setting a system up for the first time, there's lots of things that can be done at any point that help with the overall kind of database integrity and cleanliness of the system. We all have to do our laundry and dishes. There's a lot of that that happens with the way CiviCRM, like any CRM system, is set up and maintained long term. So for the purposes of today's demo, you're getting the absolute most out of it to support all of the work that you're doing to build relationships to further your organization's mission. So if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out, follow up. If you have follow up suggestions on future trainings that you'd like to see, I also welcome an email with those ideas or suggestions. This has been recorded, so we'll be sharing that recording out to everybody who registered today, as well as posting that and making that publicly available. But thank you everybody for your time and questions in today's training.